Seattle Department of Transportation and is orchestrating the access management pilot at Pike Place. Yay! Broadly, he works on projects and access management and programs ranging from low pollution neighborhoods to transit station area planning to citywide growth strategy policies to accelerating and scaling the city's climate actions. Great, looking forward to hearing that. Tyler Wong is a transportation engineer with 10 years of experience. He uses his experience as a bicycle and transit commuter to inform the projects he designs. Tyler works in Seattle Department of Transportation's Capital Projects Division on multimodal projects, including pedestrian and bicycle, last mile to transit, and roadway design projects. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. I want to clap for you all for coming on a Saturday morning to spend your time with us. Thank you so much. Tyler and I are going to try to squeeze in what I would say a semester's worth of conversation in, I think, what we got an hour. So, and we want you also to do some drawing and some creative thinking here, radical thinking. So I'm just going to start off, again, Radcliffe, Dacanay, with SDOT, and we're here to talk about why streets work or they don't. I'm just going to open up with, who knows where this is at? Anyone? All right, a few folks, but not too far from here is at 12th and James. And what do you notice?
No cars.
No cars. It doesn't look like a street that we're all so used to. And this is very rare in Seattle. And these are kind of the things that we're going to be talking about from how do we make streets better, as Gordon was talking about, safer for people and also safer for cars. I'd like to start it with what do you see here in this scene here? Not far from here either. This is at 10, right?
Lots of cars.
Lots of cars. There you go. That's pretty much our system, at least here in the United States. And so what I want you to do as you think about streets is think about what is the function of this street, or any street. And this is often what we experience when we interrelate with a street. Here in the United States context, it's mostly for cars. Here in Seattle, I have to say, it's still mostly for cars. But I think the other question that we don't often ask and that we need to ask is, who is this street? Who are we designing these streets for? You know, who are they intended to serve? So when you think of who can drive, who can access the street, think of that as you think about how to make our streets better places for people. I'm going to hand it to Tyler because he's much more of an expert on street design and the technical aspects than I am. He'll do Street Design 101, covers some of the elements that we talk about in the streets, how to make them better. He'll breeze through that, and then we'll transition back to me and lay the groundwork for our exercise, as it were. Right, Tyler.
Okay. So Street Design 101, we're going to go through this kind of quickly so that you guys have time for this activity. But I guess just to get a lay of the land, who here biked, walked, or took transit today to get here? So it looks like everyone, almost everyone. But it looks like everyone has kind of that sense of what street does, what good bike lanes are, what good sidewalks are. This is kind of just to give you an understanding of what goes behind that, how we kind of make these decisions. And so yeah, start off, where does standards for design come from? A big one to start off is the MUTCD. It's the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's put out by the federal government. And it's really the Bible of like street design, roadway design, what goes into all these devices, the signs, the markings, the signals. So this is really, if you're not following this, then you can kind of lose your federal funding, lose some of these things. So this is really the overall skyscraper of everything. And then from there, there's also other documents that the federal government puts out. And then we have some of these documents by organizations of traffic engineers. So NACDO is the It's really hard.
National Association of City Transportation Officials. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
That is. There are a lot of acronyms in this industry.
That's
the first one. But that's the city traffic engineer. So people that are really working in the heart of our cities. It's founded by someone that worked at New York DOT. And so you really have that understanding of what goes into a city. On the bottom we have AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. And so those are more of the people that work at WashDOT, the people that are on our state highways. And so it's a little bit more of a statewide level of what they're thinking of. So it's a little more conservative. And then we have, from WashDOT, the design manual. So that's our state government giving us design standards. And then lastly, we have the city, which has our own design standards. So all of these things go into the decision making of standards and what goes into them. And one example of that is the city's Seattle Streets Illustrated, which is our right-of-way improvement manual. So a lot of these design manuals will have kind of a cross-section, they'll have a range of values, they'll have information about what goes into the design, but this is just an example of what you'll see in some of these design manuals. So just to get into some of it, what are some of the frameworks we've heard of as we talk about street design? A big one that's come in the past maybe 10 to 15 years is complete streets, the idea that we're really trying to design for all users of the street. So we have everything from sidewalks, bike lanes, parking, cars, transit, green infrastructure, everything that goes into this freight, Amazon deliveries, how are these all getting done? Then we go into Vision Zero, the understanding that any serious injury or fatality is not acceptable on our roads. It's really a mind shift away from that idea that cars is king and we need to be able to drive, to an idea that anyone on our street should be safe, and we're designing for those vulnerable users. And then lastly, a more recent one is the safe systems approach. This is the understanding that there are multiple levels of making sure that we're designing our streets both for the road users, the vehicles, the speed, the road safety. And this model kind of shows that if you align these all together, some of those might have holes in them, but if we can do them all correctly, we can prevent a crash from coming all the way through the Swiss cheese so the holes don't line up, so we can kind of prevent these things. And there's a backstop on each level. Okay, so that's kind of the bigger framework of where street design comes from, some of these bigger concepts. And so here's kind of more of the nitty-gritty, what goes into street design, what are the different elements that we can use to do street design. So I've kind of broken this part down into three parts. There's the linear, what happens along the roadway, between the block faces, between the intersections, the bike lanes, the sidewalks. There's the intersections, what happens at these parts where people are turning, where everyone has to cross, where everyone's mixing, and then some of these mid-block treatments that we can do to also slow speeds. Okay, so linear design, again, is that block face. What are we doing between the blocks, and how are we getting people to move around the city? So here's so we're just going to go through, and we're going to have different elements of design that we can use to kind of give it a set space and what we can do with it and how we can program it. So the first one is we're looking at car lanes. A lot of times you'll see wide streets, 12-foot lanes, even wider, 14. Think of like Soto, where there's a lot of freight traffic, very fast speeds. If we can bring those lane widths down to something around 11 to 10 feet, you're able to really harness that space, bring in those extra feet to create space for bike lanes, buffers, parking, bus lanes. So that's a big one to start off with. As we look at streets that were built in the 60s or earlier, how can we bring them into the modern day to serve all the needs of users? And I think a big part of that is looking at how do we reduce speeds so that if and when crashes do happen, they're not as fatal or severe. As you can see, at 40 miles per hour, you have a 77% likelihood of a fatal or serious injury. But if we can bring it down to 20%, that drops to 18%. So that's a very big difference on if you're getting hit by a car as you're crossing, what the outcome can be. The next option.
No. Oh, there it is. We had that flicker earlier. We're like, hopefully it was that nice.
That was dramatic effect. Because the boogeyman in the room that some people talk about is road diets or lane reductions. How do we take away some of that space for cars while still giving them that efficiency to make space for other things? So a 4-lane road can be dropped down to a 3-lane road in this situation. And by combining that left turn lane that often people are waiting in to turn left and kind of facing them to each other, you're giving space for bike lanes on the outside. So sometimes, even though you're giving away lanes from cars to another mode, you're actually making it more efficient and more safe because people have more predictability to wait in the left turn lane instead of holding up traffic behind them in the through lane. And another version of that here on Dexter. Does anyone know this area? It's the kind of alternative to Westlake cycle track. You can use that space for also things like transit as well. Okay, so sidewalks and walkways. I think everyone kind of knows what a sidewalk is, but there's kind of different elements that I want to talk about as we look at sidewalks as well. So there's different zones of the sidewalk. There's the pedestrian zone where people kind of are more familiar where you're walking. There's also the frontage zone and the furniture zone that I want to talk about. So the furniture zone is really a different space between the sidewalk and the street. And it's really important to have that space, if you can, because it really gives that offset between users on the sidewalk, pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, strollers, and vehicles. And not having that space really gives a different sense of comfort and kind of safety as you're walking along the street. And then the frontage zone is an important spot between the back of the sidewalk and what's happening behind it. Because as you can see, if you have large ferns or trees growing, it really kind of diminishes the space you want to use because people aren't really walking right against the building face. You're not walking against, in a hallway, the wall. You're walking in the middle. And so if you don't have that offset, it really diminishes how wide you can have a sidewalk. So I think that's something we'll think about as we do our activity, thinking about the effective width versus just what is given to each user. Okay, and so bike facility types, I think everyone knows there's a lot of different kinds of facility types. There's buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes, there's paths on the side of the road, there's shared use paths that aren't even connected to the road, it's like its own path, like the Burke-Gilman. And then I think the big thing I want to discuss is also neighborhood greenways versus shared lanes. There's a difference between just having a sharrow in the road and having a real neighborhood greenway, so we'll talk about that as well. So how do we choose the bike way type we have? A big part of that comes from what's the road like, how many lanes it is, how many vehicles are going on the road, so the volume, and then also the speed of those vehicles. So as you kind of chart out, if we think about something like Broadway here, it might be something around 25 miles per hour, and it might have 5,000, so a bike lane's preferred and buffered. But if you go up to like Aurora, it's like thousands of vehicles, so you're in that separated bike lane or shared use path area. So this is just kind of an easy thing that was put out by the federal government a few years ago to kind of chart out what kind of facility type you have. And then other things we're thinking about when we're looking at what type of bike facility you want is some of these different things. Is it a school zone? Are there hills? Especially in Seattle, are there hills? Is there going to be freight in that area? A lot of parking? Are there a lot of children in the area? Families? Is there truck traffic? And also, are there seniors? So kind of what are the users and what is the type you're supposed to be designing for? So protected bike lanes, I think you've been seeing those more around the city here. It's really that separation in both in physical space and horizontal space, so giving some type of buffer as well as some kind of physical object to really protect the bike lane from the vehicle traffic. So that can kind of be either through flex posts, planters, or even continuous concrete medians as we've been seeing more often in the city. There's some different ranges of widths that we use, and it's kind of based on how much expected volume we're going to be seeing. So that's something we'll look at a little bit more later. And then as I was saying, neighborhood greenways, what's the difference between this and just a sharrow on the street? It's really making sure that you're giving someone a continuous path. So is that through wayfinding, different signage that you're seeing here to get them to know where they're going. But it's also about really reducing that speed and volume on the street to allow people to feel safe being in the middle of the street on their bikes with their families. So doing different treatments like speed cushions, speed humps in the middle of the street to really slow people down as they're driving along, but also giving bikes that opportunity to not feel like there's an abrupt stop like a speed hump or a speed bump you might see in the parking lot. It's a little more smooth. Okay, intersection design. This is really fast. Is everyone doing okay? So intersections are really that complex area where everyone's merging into each other, everyone's crossing paths, and that's why it's a really important part to look at as you're doing street design. You can see here different types of bike movements through intersections, where there's a lot of conflict. You can see in that first picture, if you're expected to merge over to the left lane versus having someone stay in their lane. This is a situation where the right lane and the bike lane might come together. There's still a lot of conflict there. Roundabouts kind of reduce that, and also protected bike lanes reduce that as well, and we'll look at that a little bit more.